This is the compost, the bucket that I just harvested from underneath my worm bag. So now I've set up my separator, and what I've done is I've put a couple of handfuls of this in there, and it's set up so that when I spin it, gravity makes the larger chunks go down into this bucket, and anything smaller, which is the castings, is down on the surface here, and we'll just, when we're done, we'll sweep that all into a smaller bucket, and that'll be the finished casting. So if you look down and there are any things in there that you'd prefer to keep, say there's some little baby worms, we have another grid, which this is a 1/4 inch, so it allows that to pass through. And we'll take that off and we'll use this one, which is an 1/8 of an inch grid, and put this in that's been separated. We'll put this into this spinner, and it will not allow those little worms to come through, but it will allow the harvested castings. So that's a simple casting method. So I'll show you just how this works. You just spin it manually, and you can hear things hitting it because they're separating out. This is not the best texture. Ideally the castings mix shouldn't be as watery, so we have to do something to remedy that before we do a separating, and that involves putting in strips of egg carton and cardboard that will absorb some of the moisture over the next week or so before doing the separating. Alright, so now imagine that this is done. We'll put what we haven't harvested back into the bucket. This will go back into the worm bin with egg cocoons in it and whatever else that hasn't been separated out. This will be useful for the garden, for making worm tea, and for putting directly into the soil mix. Okay. So this apparatus was homemade out of well, first of all, we've got the long bars of 2x4, and to it are attached 4 paint rollers. And those paint rollers have, what size of plastic pipe?
1.5.
1.5 inch plastic pipe, so it just holds tight to the paint roller basket, and so that allows this to be mobile. And we've wrapped hardware cloth around cut ends of white buckets, like 10-gallon buckets, 10 gallon. We cut them just in one. At the top of the bucket is slightly bigger circumference than the bottom of the bucket, so gravity tends to let the things fall out one end. So we've used tape to hold the hardware cloth around the bucket ends, and we've also sewn the hardware cloth with metal wire to keep it from having any holes in it so things don't pass through. And we've done the same thing with the smaller grade hardware cloth. So that's our mobile worm separating casting operation that comes into play after several months worth of worm compost production in the worm bags.